Welcome to America Reads fun and easy learning activities where college students work together to create these activities. The subjects that we cover include reading, writing, and math. In today's activity, we will be doing some math, and today we will be learning how to round in different decimal places, and I, Viridiana Rodriguez, will be walking you through this fun activity. In today's activity, we're gonna be learning how to round decimals to any place. What is rounding? Rounding is just changing a number up so that it makes it easier to use it while you're doing math. So you can see here that if we were to round this number to the 10th place, our answer would be 3.9. So it gives us a much smaller number to work with. That makes it easier for us to do math with. Because if you added this to 1, it would be a little bit harder, but if you added this to a number, it would be a lot easier to solve. When rounding, you have to pay lots of attention to where your decimal is. When you have a number like this is your decimal. The period in between your entire number is a decimal. What does a 10th, 100th, and 1000th place mean? So here we have a number, and you need to pay a lot of attention to where your decimal is at because that's going to determine how you round. So your 10th place, always, one way that I like to use to remember this is to pretend like your decimal is a 1. The decimal always represents a 1. So whenever you're rounding and you just can't seem to figure out how to do it, place a 1 right under your decimal. And then you can place zeros afterwards. And as you can see, this one here shows that our 9 is in the 10th place. Our 4 is in the 100th place. And the 3 is in the 1000th place. So if you're asked to round by the 10th place, then you would only be paying attention to this number right here. This would probably be the number that you're changing. If you're looking at the 100th place, this is going to be the number that you're changing. And when you're looking at the 1000th place, this is going to be the number that you change. So now a phrase that I like to use a lot to remember how to round is 4 or less, you're gonna let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. If the number is 4 or less, when asked to round, we're going to leave the number as it is, but if the number is 5 or more, then we are going to round up. Let's say that we have to round 3.943730 to the 10th place. So keep in mind that in order to round this, we have to pay attention to the number that comes after the 10th place also, because this number determines whether we are going to let the number rest or if we're going to raise the score. In our value here, we're being asked to round to the 10th place. And as you can see, I placed my 1 right under my decimal, and then I placed a 0, which gives us 10, which represents our 10th place. So paying attention to this number here, because this is a number that determines whether we let it rest, whether we let 9 rest, or whether we raise the score. Is the number 4 or less, or 5 or more? And we can see that this number is actually 4, which means that we are going to let it rest. It's very important to memorize that phrase that I just mentioned so that you know that 4 or less, you let it rest, 5 or more, you raise the score. So for our first example here, it's asking us to round 5.793462 to the 100th place. So I placed the phrase right here at the bottom of the screen so that we do not forget it, because that's really important for us to remember. So here I have the value 5.793462. And since it's asking us to round to the 100th place, I put my 100 right under it so that I know exactly what numbers I'm looking at. And again, as you can see, I placed my 1 right under my decimal, and then I placed the zeros as I went. We're paying attention to the 9 and the 3 here, because the 3 is telling us how we're going to round. And again, this is where we pay attention to our phrase, 4 or less, let it rest, 5 or more, raise the score. And you can see that the 3, of course, is less than 4, which means that we are going to let it rest. Our answer would actually come up to be 5.79. Next example, it's asking us to round 6.4329 to the 100th place. Now this number is a little bit bigger, and now we're taking into consideration a lot more numbers than the other problems that we were working on. So again, I have my phrase at the bottom so that we can have that there for reference, and I place my value here, and then I put 1000 right under it so that I know what place I'm rounding to and what numbers I'm supposed to pay attention to. So again, we're going to be paying attention to the 2 and the 9 because the 2 is the number that is in our 1000th place. And the 9 is going to tell us whether we let it rest or whether we raise the score. So looking at our phrase that says 5 or more, you raise the score. Is 9 more than 5? It is, which means that we are going to raise the score. Now the question is, where are we raising the score exactly? And we're going to raise 2, and we're only going to raise it by 1, because every single time that you round, the only thing that you're doing is you're basically adding 1 to whatever number you are raising. And if you're letting it rest, well then you're not changing anything. Since we are rounding to the 1000th place, we're going to round the 2 up to a 3, because the 9 is telling us that we have to raise the score of the 2. So our answer would be 6.433. For our third example here, it's telling us to round 7.567489 to the 100th place. Again, same concept, same idea, same steps. I have my value here, and then since I'm being asked to round to the 100th place, I place the 100 right under my value. Looking at how I place my 1 right under the decimal, because let's just say that the 1 is represented by the decimal in our value. And then I place the zeros right after it to represent where I'm rounding, which in this case is to the 100th place. And I have my phrase at the bottom, 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. It's really easy to remember that because it rhymes also. The numbers that we're going to pay attention to in this value are the 6 and the 7, right? Because the 6 is the number that's in the 100th place, and the 7 is going to tell us whether we're going to let it rest or whether we're going to raise the score of the number that's in the 100th place, which is 6. So 7 is not 4 or less, which leaves us that 7 is 5 or more, which is telling us to raise a score. And what number are we going to raise the score of? We're going to raise the score of 6 by 1. Remember that you're only going to raise it by 1. So when it's telling you to raise the score, you're just going to raise it by 1. So if it's 6, you're going to raise it to 7. The number that we're changing is 6, right? And 7 is telling us to raise the score, which means that our answer is going to be 7.57. Now for our fourth example and our last example, it is asking us to round 5.793462 to the 100th place. So this looks a lot similar to our last problem. The only thing that's changing is our value. I have my phrase at the bottom so that you can reference that. And then I place my 100 right under my value so that I know which numbers I'm changing and which numbers I have to look at. Place my 1 right under my decimal, and then I place the zeros as they go. Now we're looking at the 9 here because the 9 is in our 100th place. And then we're going to look at the 3 because the 3 is going to tell us whether we let it rest or whether we raise the score. Is 3 4 or less or 5 or more? And 3 is definitely 5 or less, which means that we are going to let it rest. So we are actually not going to change the 9. The only thing that we're going to do is we're just going to leave it alone, and we're just going to include these two, we're going to include 7 and 9 in our answer. So our answer would come out to 5.79. Thank you for joining me on this fun activity. Be sure to like and subscribe to America Reads YouTube channel for more lessons just like this one. See you in our next video.